While the winter months bring a nice chill to the air, the MLB Winter Meeting hot stove is starting to heat up like we have not seen before this off season, and this is when things start to get done. If you're a Dodger fan, you're celebrating. You signed Edwin Diaz. If you're a Giants fan and a Met fan, you're like, damn you, LA. How many good players do you need? Philadelphia brought back Kyle Schwarber, and now the question is, what will the San Francisco Giants do to help their team, help build their roster, and hopefully do what it takes to contend in what looks to be, as always, a very, very tough NL West. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the show. My name is Sterling Bennett. This is the San Francisco Giants Access Podcast, and let's dive into the winter meetings. Going to talk about some potential trade candidates and who San Francisco has interest in, who they've already talked to thus far through day 2 of winter meetings, but also gonna rewind the clock to start the show because while we were gone celebrating Thanksgiving, I was on vacation. A lot actually happened in the week and a half where there's been no show. And the big news a couple weeks ago or early last week was the San Francisco Giants losing their former number 1 prospect, Marco Luciano, off waivers of all things, to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, we've talked a lot about the Giants and their rather piss-poor drafting and their failures there, and maybe it's why you're open to dealing somebody like Bryce Eldridge, which now that Schwarber's off the market doesn't seem likely, but maybe it could happen. Who knows? But when you see a guy that was promised to be the next big thing, you see a guy that was supposed to almost carry the torch of that Posey, Belt, Crawford era of Giants baseball and be the next kind of cornerstone player, be claimed off of waivers. You didn't trade him for anything. Not even a single A international pitcher that can only throw 92 miles an hour. You got nothing. You just said, goodbye. You are so worthless to us. We'll let you go. Walk out the door. If that is not the most ultimate form of somewhat disrespect there is, now I don't think San Francisco is disrespecting Marco Luciano, but I do think that the fact is you didn't get anything for him, that this regime, Posey and company, were okay to saying, you know what, it's kind of a lost cause, move on. That's crazy. And my mind also thinks of how many trades, and I get it, in the midst of it, you're thinking it's finally going to click for him. He was blocked at shortstop. He was now blocked at third base because Chapman's there. You move him to the outfield, and you're holding out hope, and so maybe you don't want to deal him for a top-end arm or a big bat, who knows. But I think of all the trades you could have made had you just said yes to including Marco Luciano in one of those deals. And now he joins Joey Bart in Pittsburgh as 2 former failed Giants top prospects now playing in with the Pirates. But just an odd day where you're like, who are the Giants going to add? Oh my God, our former top prospect is gone for not even peanuts, not even a bag of chips. They couldn't even trade him for vending machine Cokes or, I don't know, a steaming hot plate of fajitas. There's nothing. They said goodbye. That was a bummer, a big bummer. But continuing on into the news that we missed over the last week or so, the Giants made a handful of coaching hires. I think one of them is just tremendous. They brought in Ron Washington to coach their infield. I love Ron Washington. I don't think there is, at least actively, coaching-wise, a more respected name amongst coaches that have, 20 plus years of longevity. He's coached the Angels. He's coached, the Rangers. He's been there, done that. Almost every single team he was with the A's a couple years ago. You just love Ron Washington. Now, Giants fans know him pretty well because he coached the 2010 Texas Rangers when San Francisco beat them in the World Series. But Ron is just the epitome of a baseball guy. Ron is a baseball dude. And those are the guys you want around. And I think San Francisco, knowing they're bringing in, and this is kind of the big reason why I love this signing. Yes, it helps the infield. Hopefully it can impact Eldridge at first base and Devers at first base as he transitions over from third or continues that transition over from third base. Maybe it helps Schmidt go from third to second, or maybe this kind of quasi-utility infielder playing second, short, and third at times, or maybe even Fitzgerald, who has a lot of range but just hasn't really unlocked the defensive metrics you like. Maybe Ron can do that. You've seen where he goes. Defense usually is one of the strong suits, even if the team isn't very good overall. However, the bigger reason I love this deal is because of the impact it should have on Tony Vitello. And funny enough, Vitello, the Giants' new manager, was someone who advocated and asked Zach Manasian and Buster Posey, like, can we bring in Ron Washington? Someone that said, hey, look, I want to surround myself with the right people, knowing that I'm kind of going in blindly. Now, I know baseball and I know how it works and whatever. I've managed at the collegiate level, but this is different. And to aid my transition, I want to surround myself with the right kind of people. And I love the fact that Tony Vitello is doing this. San Francisco already brought in, Bruce Bochy back as an advisor. Dusty Baker's in the organization again. And you bring in Ron Washington now in some capacity, now being their infield coach. It's like you have three guys who have been to, won, lost World Series, been in every single situation possible of Vitello, who they're banking on being the next great manager of the San Francisco Giants. He can pick their mind. He can hopefully, just ask them questions, sit in their offices and say, hey, let's get a round table of legends of the last 20, 30 years or so that can help me grow as a manager in my first season with the Giants. And I love that. This is the impact I think he'll have. The wisdom all three of those guys can pass down, but primarily Washington probably being there on a more consistent basis, traveling with the team, being in the clubhouse, being with the coaching staff on a every single day basis, I think is a big thing for the Giants of Vitello, where if you are going to find a manager that is a college guy making a giant leap to the majors, no minor league coaching experience at all. Joe Madden hated the move, called disrespectful and everything. And to a certain degree, I get that. There is a jumping of the line that took place. But if you're going to do that, you want to surround those guys with some veterans. It's no different than in the MLB or any other sport, really. But basketball comes to mind of like, hey, there's a reason why if they're going to rebuild or go the youth movement route, you want to surround your young guys with some veterans that have been there for 10, 15 years that maybe can't give it all like they used to, not in their prime as much as they once were, but they can still add so much mentally in regards to preparation and situational awareness where maybe a young coaching staff just couldn't do. And I love the fact that Posey's almost like the ghost of Buster Posey's past, albeit Baker wasn't there, but Ron Washington, Posey knows him pretty well, played against him a handful of times. Bochy obviously was a manager for, he won the World Series here with Buster Posey. And then Baker, being a World Series champion, I think, with the Houston Astros, and obviously going to one with San Francisco in 2002, which never lived that down. Thank you, Game 7, Felix Rodriguez and Livan Hernandez. But it's just like you love this. You love Vitello himself because of what he's doing and, going to the DR and trying to talk to, and learn the culture of the Spanish-speaking players, but also just the insulation they're building, the fortification of the organization they're building. That was a lot of zations and, and whatnot words, but you just love, I think, on paper at least, what they're building out there in San Francisco. And hopefully it pays off dividends. I think if you want to point to a team that has maybe the potential for the biggest leap, of going from a non-playoff team to maybe the number 4 seed, the top wild card team, or maybe if the Dodgers have a down year, which it never happens, maybe a division crowns in the future. But I think the Giants, at least on paper, are in for a big leap. Having Adames hopefully stay hot and not have that kind of first 2 month slump that he had to begin his new tenure in the orange and black, and Devers for the whole year. You can kind of easily pencil in a handful of more wins if you can get the pitching staff at least average. But the coaching staff, I think, can help kind of bridge that gap to a certain degree. But the Giants also hired Jesse Chavez as their bullpen coach. Now, I don't know exactly what Chavez brings as a bullpen coach. He ain't never coached before, but he's like 35 years old. He's seemingly found a way to reinvent himself, add new pitches, and find like a 15-year career where it seemed like he wasn't going to last 5 years. he just kept bouncing around, minors, majors, won a World Series with the Braves a couple years ago, and kept signing with the Braves, going elsewhere, getting traded to the Braves, going elsewhere, going back to the Braves. He's the guy that I think you love the adaptability that he has, at least like with his mindset of like, I can't throw 95 miles an hour. That's not my game. How can I make myself valuable to so many other teams throughout my career? And, we'll see. It's definitely a less impactful move than Ron Washington is, but I'm intrigued by it. I also love the fact that the Giants are bringing in people that Posey can relate to. Posey himself being a young, president of baseball operations guy, but had played the game for so long, for almost a decade. He knows a lot of the guys he's signing or played, against them, across with them, but also just getting guys that are kind of like on the cusp of like, they have the old style of baseball kind of mindset because they played under it in the early 2010s, but had longevity to adapt themselves to what has become the new sabermetrics and Fangraphs and kind of further pushing the analytical approach to baseball mindset as well. It's almost like a blending of the two where Posey's saying like, yeah, we still want to play like the Bochy teams did, but I have to realize that the game has changed, if you will, to use the Tron Legacy quote. Things have changed. The game has changed. Tron Ares is also terrible. This is a bad movie. Don't watch that movie at all. Tron Legacy, though, that's a classic in my opinion. Still holds up today. Michael Sheen, great actor. Jeff Bridges, the CGI is weird, but we always love the dude in whatever he's in. But I love the Ron Washington hiring. I like Jesse Chavez, certainly interested by him, but let's pause the hiring discussion and let's get into what you came here for. That is, what is the latest San Francisco Giants winter meeting rumors, news, intel? What's happening out there in Florida this year, which I would hate to spend the winter time in Florida. That doesn't sound fun. I'm in California, but Florida in the winter? Not a fan. Not a fan, but that's where they're at. There hasn't been much movement thus far. You had a couple of small signings, a couple of small trades. San Francisco's only signed one guy, that being Sam Hedges, about a week and a half ago or so. You've seen movement of the Phillies signing Kyle Schwarber, like I already said to begin the show, or re-signing him, excuse me. You've seen the Dodgers, like they always do, spend big money, make a big move, go out and get Edwin Diaz. And like I said earlier, the pivot becomes, what does San Francisco do? I'm not one to say how do you respond, because if you are in the business of reacting to other teams' moves, that's where you get in trouble. Unfortunately, the fan base as a whole seems to be in that mindset, and it really isn't just the Giants. It's across all sports. As soon as you see your rival make a move, you're saying, what's my team going to do next? And sometimes the best move you make is the one you don't make, but also I think being a reactionary front office isn't good, and fans are like that, and rightfully so. I get it. When I saw it, I was like, damn it, like how can they keep getting away with this? And I'm a pretty big advocate for salary cap and salary floor to help kind of hopefully make more parity in baseball, but I don't know how much that will help. That said, the Giants, according to everybody, have their hands essentially in every asset of winter meetings, whether it is starting pitching or bullpen or the outfield or whatever. They just are kind of on the prowl. Now, they haven't made a move yet, and I think there are some moves they would like to make, or are at least discussing with some teams. They've already expressed interest in a handful of starting pitchers. I love that, albeit there is one we'll get to later I don't love and I would not sign by any means necessary. There also are some top-end free agents San Francisco has apparently been at least talking about. We'll get to what Scott Boras said about Cody Bellinger later in the show, but I want to start with the Giants expressing interest in starting pitcher Zach Gallen of the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's a free agent now. And Gallen's interesting because he's a guy, besides last year, you rewind the tape, 2-3 years ago, he's a perennial Cy Young candidate. He's eating innings. The strikeout levels are high. He's pitching in a hitter-friendly ballpark out there in Arizona, and you're just saying, man, Gallen truly has it. And I don't know what happened last year. He just fell off a cliff. The ERA skyrocketed. There was some bounce back starts in the second half of the season, which made many people surprised the D-backs didn't attempt to re-sign him. And I think he fits in San Francisco. However, I would not be the sucker because, again, the last thing the Giants can afford to be, knowing they don't really want to spend that much money, or at least if they do, they want to be really particular on who they sign. I don't want to be that sucker that falls into the trap of signing a pitcher like Zach Gallen to a long-term deal, knowing that he may be on the downward trend. Now, there always is maybe a bounce back in store for Gallen next season. You get him in Oracle Park, a pitcher's-friendly ballpark in the division. Maybe it helps him a lot. There's more space, less hits fall, the home run numbers go down, and maybe there is more of a sense of you can pitch to contact and you don't have to worry about giving up home runs like you were last year with the D-backs. But while the fit makes sense, this team needs a starting pitcher. This team needs to find at least a number 2 or 3 guy behind Ray and Webb and solidify their starting 5. I think they have to at least add 1 or 2 more guys. You lost Verlander. You don't really know who's behind your top 2 guys. Layden Rope's probably penciled in at the 5 or the 4 maybe. So you want to find at least a 3, 2, or 5 guy if you're lucky. And I think I don't mind San Francisco putting an offer out there, but I think you have to be, and I think it almost goes back to what Farhan Zaidi was doing with a lot of the guys he signed, where he would give big money out to players like, Kevin Gausman, Blake Snell, even Matt Chapman. Now, there's circumstances and some circumstantial evidence or context as to why those deals were shortened and whatnot, but I think a contract for Zach Gallen, I wouldn't go more than 2 or 3 years. I think it'd be like a 1-for-1. Hey, we'll give you a 1 year. Then maybe we'll do kind of a mutual option or a player option, kind of like what the D-backs gave Jordan Montgomery, kind of what San Francisco gave Carlos Rodon, where it's like, you can give us some flexibility and we'll also give you some flexibility. Let's say San Francisco signs Zach Gallen and things aren't going well. Posey would trade him away. He totally would. He isn't going to sit on his hands, do nothing. Whereas if he pitches well, and Gallen wants to kind of, bank in on his big season with the Giants, if that does happen, he can leave in the offseason and you're okay, kind of saying like, you know what, that was worth it. And you can put a qualifying offer on him, I think, and maybe it's the best of both worlds then. You can get younger and kind of help restore your farm system in that route. I think it makes sense. It's simply just the longevity. The Giants don't seem to want to pay a starting pitcher 5 years, $150 million. They don't want to give out $30 million per year deals. And I don't think Gallen would net that. However, Gallen also seems like somebody that would want to use the Giants as a potential destination to almost, you use me, I use you. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours for a year. And then if everything goes well, we'll part ways and say, thank you so much for your services. I have some concerns. You're either buying a guy in a down year who, swoops back up in a big way on a graph and you're saying, oh, what a great signing by Posey and the Giants, or you're sitting here like, how did they give Gallen all that money? I would love, again, him on a short-term deal, but outside of that, I just don't know. Like, you have to really sell me on the idea. I think there are better pitchers on the market that the Giants could target and should target, or at least give you a more solidified or consistency that Gallen can't. There is more variables I don't really feel the desire to pay high money to, but it's not my money. So if you do in the comments, tell me down below, you like Gallen? You don't like Gallen? What are your thoughts on signing the former D-backs ace of the last couple of years to a multi-year deal? Would you go 2 years? Would you go 3 years? Would you go 5 years? Or would you say, give me a 1-for-1, Sterling? You're right. Do not commit that much money in that long of a contract to a guy like Gallen, who, quite frankly, could be on the downward trend in his career. We also got some bad news, though, on the trade market, because according to Ken Rosenthal, the Minnesota Twins are not trading their top stars, Byron Buxton, Joe Ryan, or Pablo López, which, if you heard my rant in the last episode of the Giants should go all in, get Schwarber, trade Eldridge, and go get Joe Ryan or Lopez, it's like, well, that is seemingly off the table now. I don't truly buy this report. I think this may be some strategic deniability of like, we're not selling, more so hoping that a team gives you kind of a higher end offer, or kind of comes to the table and says, hey, we'll give you more than maybe you're asking for, or at least kind of the Godfather deal, if you will. So I don't think that the Twins are not trading stars. I just think this is more of them saying, we're not trading stars unless, and I don't think San Francisco, unless they are willing to part ways with Bryce Eldridge and some of their top dogs in their farm system, which quite frankly, I don't think I would. Eldridge can be a centerpiece, but I would be very reluctant to get rid of anybody inside that top 5 for guys like Ryan or Lopez, knowing Eldridge is your number 1 guy right now, essentially. And seems MLB ready. And now the Twins, I think, would covet Eldridge, but I don't think it'd be enough. I just really wouldn't want to deal somebody like, Hoswar in the farm system, who looks like the next big thing and could probably be a top 5 prospect by the end of this season, next year. He looks like the guy. He's super young too, so time may tell. But it sucks because I was all in. Now again, Schwarber signing with the Phillies may have kind of ended this talk anyways, but it does seem as if the Giants, who I think would have loved Pablo Lopez and loved Joe Ryan, to get controllable arms who are relatively healthy and are still kind of young and controllable. Now it seems like that those guys are off the market entirely, albeit, the Dodgers could go all in, the Tigers could go all in. Maybe you see a team like the Yankees get crazy and get Buxton and Joe Ryan. Maybe the Padres. There's a lot of talk of the Padres, kind of looking for a blockbuster deal. You send Fernando Tatis to the Twins? Now, that may not entice the Twins, but from a Padres blockbuster discussion, I think Tatis might be on the market. And a Buxton, Joe Ryan, maybe a prospect type guy. I don't know if that, really is what the Twins want, but I'm just saying, you want a blockbuster. There's a pretty big blockbuster right there in the making. But right now, Minnesota feels like they're not, at least as of now, willing to deal their 3 guys, which certainly hurts San Francisco on the trade market. But now the bigger question is, where could San Francisco pivot? Now, I'm not saying I would include Bryce Eldridge in all these trades, maybe in a couple of them, which I'll kind of let you know as we go. But there are a handful of starting pitchers out there I think San Francisco would be in on. I think probably have had some calls done. And probably expressed some interest in. The Giants, like the San Francisco 49ers, like most teams, they always call. Now, whether those calls go anywhere, we don't know. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential trades, 6 kind of, that the Giants, I think, could make for starting pitchers and or at least one infielder to fill their second base spot this offseason. The first one, I think, would probably be the one I would not include Eldridge on, and maybe the first 4 Eldridge wouldn't be in on whatsoever. But I think the Kansas City Royals have a lot of needs. Now, they have a lot of outfield needs, and maybe you get into this discussion of Elliot Ramos, or maybe you're more open to dealing guys like Luis Matos or guys along that kind of nature. For a player like Kris Bubic, who I like Kris Bubic, when he was healthy, was really good last year for the Royals. I think he'd fit nicely into your 3 spot, and you'd go, Webb, Ray, and Bubic. However, the one kind of hindering factor in me buying into this is he had a shoulder injury last year. You don't love that. You'd rather get guys that have more control on their contracts. And again, you like Bubic, but there may be too many faults or too much downside to a player like him to part ways with some guys that maybe you view as a future your franchise type player. And I think that the Royals would probably benefit more from keeping him and waiting to see if the deadline can pick up some things in the middle of the year. If he has a really good first half of the season and the Royals just aren't in on things, trading Bubic then can make more sense for Kansas City. But for the Giants, maybe kind of buying low on a guy, which is what they seem to want to do a lot nowadays, and not get rid of the entire farm system might benefit them more and maybe entice them more. So that's an option. I don't think it'd be the one I would do, or at least the one I'd be the most excited about. I would like it because it gives you a better arm in your rotation and is certainly upgrade over guys like Verlander and Birdsong last year. But the injury is concerning. Shoulder injuries don't usually go well and sometimes come with longevity, which in most cases, you love longevity. Injury wise, you don't love shoulder injuries. So that may be the one I would be like, hold off on that. The other one that I think is more of a buy low type of deal for the Giants, which again, they love doing this, is for José Berríos of the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays wouldn't sign Dylan Cease. They went and got Cody Ponce. They feel like they are going to go all in, as they should. They're in their window. They lost the World Series because Jeff Hoffman couldn't close a game out. That's how crazy it was, right? Game 7 at home, you have your chance, and Miguel Rojas, of all people, hits a home run. What are you doing? I'm shocked they were not paying up for Edwin Rios or Edwin Diaz, excuse me. Edwin Rios, my God. Edwin Diaz, sorry. But they also have a now loaded rotation with your Savage and Gosman and Ponce and Cease and all that stuff. And it doesn't seem like they are like they'd rather shed some money after spending a lot of money. And I think trading Berríos, you may almost get him for free, which could entice San Francisco, knowing that they don't have the depth at the starting pitching position. Maybe you have concerns of Birdsong and Rupp's longevity or their ability to be healthy all year and give you a consistent outing every 5 days. Well, Berríos, the ERA is going to get inflated. It may come down in San Francisco, which again I think could be a good thing for the Giants and him. I think he fit well with the Giants. And the roster they're building around him, he wouldn't have to be a 1 or 2 or maybe even a 3 at that point. He may be your 4 and Rupp becomes your 5, but I think he'd be a 4 that could eat innings for you, right? He's got some nasty stuff. He'll strike out some dudes. He'll give up hits. He'll allow a lot of runs. But if you're saying, if I can get 200 plus innings from Webb, 180, 190 from Berríos, and you have Ray, who had a great season last year, hopefully that continues, you are at least innings eating wise, you're not only buying your farm system guys some more time, but also you're getting somebody that you can toss out there every 5 days, have consistency, and give your offense a chance, which should be much improved this year, knowing you have Devers for at least, 2 added months onto your season. So I don't hate that. It'd be very kind of a buy low, take on the contract, give away almost nobody. Maybe you'd have to give up Tyler Fitzgerald if they don't get, BOMBSHELL back, or if they aren't, maybe Casey Schmidt, although again, Schmidt may be too high of an asking price. You may give up someone smaller, maybe it's like Spencer Bivens, a guy kind of this to help their bullpen as a whole. I don't think the asking price will be too big for Toronto. They want to win now. And I think getting bullpen depth for them may be more valuable than starting pitching depth. And the Giants need starting pitching depth. So I think there is a way where like a 1-for-1 trade of like MLB ready dudes kind of works out. And I think in that case, the Giants might be a big, player in the Berríos trade market. But again, that is a lower level move that I think the Giants should at least be open to. And I certainly am this early into the offseason. The other move, and I think it's unlikely to happen, but I think the Giants are at least going to give a call to the Miami Marlins about Sandy Alcantara and Edward Cabrera. Now, the Marlins took off Yuri Perez off the trade market, as they should. He's young, and he looks like an ace of the future. But Sandy's coming off kind of a back-and-forth season. And like Bubic, it might be better for Miami to hold on to him until the trade deadline. Now, the Marlins are also an intriguing team that if they make the right moves, they don't feel too far away. They have a really good front office. I think they have a nice crop of young guys coming up. Kyle Stowers was awesome last year for them. And I don't know if they are exactly, chomping at the bit to get rid of their starting pitching, but they have a lot of guys. You've heard names like Ryan Weathers out there in the trade market, and they just seem like they're willing to move some of those guys for a bat. Now, this one, I think you may see in Miami, knowing they don't have to move either one of those guys, they might be holding out for a Bryce Eldridge type offer. I don't think the Giants would do that. I wouldn't do that, but I at least think like both those guys have ace or at least number 2 starting pitcher potential. And if you are at least believing in going all in and having a controllable asset, which both those guys are under cheap contracts, why wouldn't you do it? I just think that deal, as soon as they say we want Eldridge, Giants probably like, call back if the offer is less. Call back when you change your mind. Whereas I just don't think Miami would do that as of right now, simply because they or the Marlins wouldn't do it now because they don't have to, and that's a big thing. Like a lot of people are like, why aren't the Giants doing this and that? And it's like, well, sometimes it takes 2 to tango. You can make an offer and guys may not want to sign with the Giants, or you can try to make a trade and some teams want too much. And you're like, wait a minute, no. Like, we can't do that. That's now practice on our end. And so I think the Marlins trade would probably be the hardest to get done for like just one starting pitcher, nobody else included, going back to San Francisco, whether it is Alcantara or Cabrera. The other deal I think the Giants might actually do, and I think this one of the grouping, if I'm ranking likeliness, I would say Berríos, this next trade, Bubic, then Alcantara and Cabrera. And we have 2 more here I want to get to, but I think Mitch Keller of the Pirates on a really cheap contract. We've talked about a lot about before. The Giants want to trade for guys under control, but also innings eaters, guys that can go out there every single, week, 5 days, give you 5 or 6 innings. And I think Keller would be great. Now, you'd like to include Marco Luciano in this deal, knowing he's going to the Pirates anyways, but that's not going to happen. The Pirates also have a ton of starting pitching. And again, kind of like Miami and Kansas City, they don't have to deal Keller. There's a real opportunity if the Pirates, although I don't really buy into their interest in getting better or signing a big bet like Kyle Schwarber, which apparently they were in on, which I just don't believe that. That seems performative. But they don't really have to trade Keller, and they can maybe believe that if their pitching is healthy all year with Paul Skeens leading a charge, they can just outpitch you every 5 days, and they're going to be in a lot of games. Now, that may not happen. It is the Pittsburgh Pirates, which, they're not very good. But Keller, like the Pirates, can drive up the asking price like Miami could, knowing that we don't have to deal our guys. Like it's a little different than Berríos and Bubic, where it's like, and Bubic kind of falls more into the Keller and, Alcantara Cabrera category. But like Berríos, for example, their rotation is like set. And they're like, we have kind of this albatross contract. It's cheaper than what prices are going for now, but quite frankly, we don't need this guy on the roster. And if we lose out on, Bichette and guys like that, maybe we can find somebody else out there who wants him. I could see the Cubs, who we'll get to in a second, maybe opening the books for Berríos and saying, hey, bring him on. We didn't get a top line guy. We have, Steele off of an injury, and we got Imanaga back, and let's get Berríos and let's just, eat innings all year. But Mitch Keller, to me, makes a lot of sense for the Giants. He kind of fits. He's where Logan Webb is like that kind of, he's an ace that just gets dudes out, right? Great strikeouts numbers last year. I think Webb took a big leap last year in regards to his strikeouts. He pitches to contact, sinker baller, and a great ballpark for pitchers. I think Keller's pretty much Logan Webb minus the sinker. Like, he wants to strike guys out. He'll eat innings all year. He'll give up more hits. He'll take more chances in regards to pitching. And he's kind of unafraid to give up home runs. But like, for a guy of his nature, it's like he wants to go out there and pitch. He's never hurt. And I think, unlike Bubic, unlike Alcantara, him and Berríos are probably more of the 2 guaranteed to be out there on the mound and rubber. for the Giants almost all season, which, minus a, IL stint here or there, for whatever reason, like I broke my finger, or my toenail fell off and I can't pitch. Those guys just feel like guys that, like, you write dog next to their name. Now, sometimes other dogs have bigger bites in their bark, but Keller and Berríos, I think, do have some bark to them. And it's just guys you say, you know what? You don't give us the best chance to win, but you give us a chance. And that's what matters here. The Giants, too many times the last couple of years, just really haven't had guys that give them a chance to win on the mound every single 5 days. And I think Keller and Berríos at least can give you a chance to win, albeit Keller, to me at least, higher than Berríos could, although those guys seem cut from the same cloth as each other. That said, the other and maybe unlikeliest deal of the bunch is a blockbuster that I think the Giants could at least entertain. And I think you might be open to trading away Bryce Eldridge for, and that is to the Washington Nationals for MacKenzie Gore and CJ Abrams. The Giants already have a shortstop. Abrams could move to second base. The Nationals seem a couple years away. They have a new, front office involved out there in Washington. And they may see both these guys as not part of the future and maybe not part of what will be their next cycle of hopeful contention. And if they think they can get a haul, or at least maybe a high-end top prospect slugging near MLB ready young hitter like Eldridge, I think they would at least listen. Now, I think this deal would probably have to include Eldridge, Carson Whisenhunt, Casey Schmidt, maybe Fitzgerald in there just to have an MLB-ready guy play second base in the meantime, but a guy that's still young enough to, give you a few years of control and, can kind of help bridge the gap to get to the next level. Now, it'll probably have to be more than just who I have in front of me, but I think a deal starting with those guys, Eldridge, Whisenhunt, Schmidt, guys that are almost ready, or at least, again, can kind of bridge the gap to the next contending year. Now, there are other teams out there that can offer the Nationals so much more. The Mets, if you want to go to the Red Sox, who I think may be done trading away or trading for pitching, but still, the Red Sox, the Dodgers can do it. You can maybe talk about the Reds, who they are wanting to deal pitching, which I think you can toss Brady Singer in here. If you want to get nuts, Hunter Green could be in here. Just a lot of guys are out there, but I think a 2-for-1 deal, or two guys going back to San Francisco that can fill two holes for them that are still controllable, that are still kind of young. You finally get some speed on your team in Abrams. There are some character concerns, the gambling issues that he had, or being out late at the casino, whatever he was doing. There are some concerns there, but I think that getting in San Francisco with the guys they have on the roster, a more veteran-led roster, you have Adames and Devers and Chapman, Webb, and more guys in the organization. I think Ron Washington would be great for CJ Abrams. That to me is like, oh my God, I am unraveling the banana, the onion now of like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Now, this is a deal that I would do. Now, again, I think you'd have to ask more, or at least the Nationals would ask for more. But I would, at least from a starting package standpoint, which there could be a deal breaker involved, I would be open to trading away Bryce Eldridge for Abrams and Gore. Now, maybe the deal gets crazier and you just kind of say, hey, you're asking for too much here. But Gore had a down second half, but I think you saw how good the ceiling could be. And I think if the Giants want young pitching you don't have to pay for just yet, that's a guy that maybe you'd be open to acquiring. And Abrams is still cheap. He's a guy who I think you can put at second base all year. He'll still 20, 30 bases for you. He'll get in scoring position and set the table for players like Devers and Adames and Chapman. While maybe you lose Schmidt or a higher end prospect in your system who maybe you don't want to part ways with, this is your window. Like I know longevity matters, and I know I've said that word so much today, so I'm sorry. I know wanting to have your future taken care of and in mind matters. I'll word it that way. That maybe you don't want to part ways with, some of your top prospects, but Eldridge is kind of blocked right now. Now you can, you know, talk about, well, he can play first and DH. I get that. But like, I don't know, like Devers has to play somewhere and he's either first or DHing. Now you can say, well, whatever Devers doesn't do, you can do, but you know, and we'll get to some more guys down the road, but like if you want to trade Eldridge and go get Gore and Abrams and get rid of more in the process, that are two attainable, young, solid players, and there have been ceilings of elite level play out of both those guys at their positions. You move Abrams to second, you may see better batting because it's less defense responsibilities for him. I think you may see more out of those two guys now, and you get Gore out of Washington, which is a big ballpark in itself, but move him to Oracle. I mean, come on, that seems like a dream in heaven for him. And I think, you can sell me on, well, if say the Giants trade Eldridge and the defense of Ramos really, is bothersome, he can DH on some days. You can go sign an outfielder and improve your defense. And I know Ramos isn't the prototypical DH. And I'm not saying I would want to do that. I'm saying I'm at least open to how can we attack this thing from all angles to make this thing work? Because, quite frankly, there is no promise Eldridge is that guy. You like the idea of what he could be, but and Posey, to be fair, smartly is driving a hard bargain saying, we think he's a quote-unquote generational hitter. Okay, well, if you believe that, you don't deal him, but if you can deal that guy who may not be a generational hitter, a lot of swing and miss in that game, folks, which I hope works out. I'm not saying I'm out of him. I'm just saying as a whole, like, you could pitch me on the idea, and I wouldn't say no. I'd be open to this. I really would. The window's now. The Dodgers are great, and I get that. The Padres are kind of in flux, and AJ Preller's always doing things, but I'd really be open to this. One other deal that I think the Giants should at least approach, I don't think they will, but if the Cubs, who have shown interest in acquiring and signing Alex Bregman, sign him, maybe the Cubs are open to dealing Nico Hoerner for maybe a bullpen piece or two. I know San Francisco's thin at that position, and we'll see how that changes, hopefully, as the winter meetings and offseason continue. But similar to that of Abrams, you get Nico Hoerner on this, his team. He can play good defense. He can play the entire infield minus first base. He's got some speed. He hits for contact. He gets on base at a high clip. And really, like, you are looking for guys that can set the table for your big bats. They don't have that now. Ramos has too many strikeouts. He's really streaky. He is a 6 through 9 hitter, which I would love that for him. Matos hasn't clicked yet. Gilbert has potential, but quite frankly, he's a 6 through 9 hitter like Ramos is. Jung-Hoo Lee, you hope, can be that guy, but there has been some really good flashes like to begin last year, but then there's been some really ugly months where you're like, whoa, should you be hitting 9th? Should you be hitting 8th in this lineup just to kind of roll things back over for the top guys for us? And so you put Hoerner hitting 2nd or 1st, setting a table for you, adding some more speed, where Jung-Hoo Lee gives you no speed on the base path, which is crazy to me, and no stolen base opportunities. It's just like, what's happening? Like, Willy Adames should not be leading this team in stolen bases. You love 10 out of that guy. Great. Give us 10. We need guys that can steal 15 or 20. You don't have to have a lot of guys that can do that, but one guy you can put in there and say, hey, can you give us 15 to 20 stolen bases per year and get us and our offense into a better scoring position on a higher clip? And I think Hoerner and especially Abrams can do that for them. So I would at least be open. And the Giants should, I think, call the Cubs, really, even if Bregman isn't signed there, but especially if he is signed. I don't know what the Cubs want, but give them a call, Buster. Give them a call, Buster. We have 3 more stories to get into. It's a jam-packed show. I know, but stick with me here. There's so many things for you to comment on down below. on YouTube or on the audio podcasting platforms. Don't forget it. Wow, words are hard. Don't forget to give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. Trying to grow the show here on the audio podcasting platforms and on YouTube. But let's get back into the show because the Giants have expressed interest in outfielder Harrison Bader. And Bader last year, which was weird to me, I've seen some fans say they don't get the intrigue in Bader. And to me, it's like, this is one of the more no-brainer, what are you talking about, kind of guys you'd want to bring in. Because he's got a solid bat. Now, it's not perfect. You would expect the 17 home runs last year to decrease overall. But he had a career high with home runs last year, 17. He played in 146 games. The OBP was around 350. The slugging was around 450. The WRC plus was 122, so way above average hitter. And he had a 3.2 WAR last year. As a whole, he can play center, he can play left, he can play right. He gives you, if you want to talk about moving guys around and maybe supplanting Lee in center, Bader can play center for most of the season. Lee can go to right field. He has a good arm, but would take, in some aspects, maybe some of the defensive responsibilities off his plate. It could make you better defensively. Maybe Lee plays left. There's ways to maneuver it to make it make sense, especially defensively. He can give you more speed. There's reasons to believe that maybe a 2 or 3 year deal could be enticing to Bader. You don't have to give him a 5-year deal. And he would give you probably, if not the same, maybe more than what Cody Bellinger would. I don't really think this team needs another left-handed hitting slugger, especially if you keep Eldridge. I think you need some right-handed contact. You love Adames, you love Chapman, but you don't have a table-setting right-handed hitter. Bader can do that, but also Bader can hit, 6 through 9 and provide some pop towards the bottom half of your order, but also give you some on-base stuff and give you some speed like he did last year for Minnesota and Philadelphia. But I think, one of the bigger questions I've seen is, I just don't get it. Like, there's a lot of, swing and miss in his game. He had 27.1%, swing and miss rate, which was the fourth highest in his career and his highest since 2021. So, okay, I get that. But you also saw the power increase by 5 home runs. It was the highest of his career. He had a career high in RBIs, and he had a career high in runs scored. He had 11 stolen bases last year, which wasn't a career high, but, that's above 10, a good mark you want. But also he gives you really good defense. He gave you a 2.2 in the Fangraphs War Department on defense. That's what you want. Or excuse me, he gave you it's just why would you not want to go get Harrison Bader? To me, I'd rather buy Harrison Bader for 2 or 3 years and pay 5 years for Cody Bellinger. I'd rather go get Harrison Bader than go trade for Randy Arozarena, who the Mariners have been open to dealing him and Castillo. Now that may change, but that's on the table. Which I think if the Mariners could the Mariners trade for Tarek Skubal or Tarek Skubal? And I think they could. Besides the point, I think Harrison Bader, should be in. Quite frankly, I think really could be the Giants' top 2-3 priorities in this offseason. You want to improve your defense. You want to get on base. You want to have, there's that word again, some longevity in your order. Bader to me is check. Now the price may be a problem. I don't know what he's asking for, but it's likely under what Cody Bellinger's asking for. And if you heard Scott Boras today in his pun field response when asked about Bellinger's market, the Giants are at least in talks because, and I'll read it for you here. This was Scott Boras when asked about Cody Bellinger's market, and this is exactly what he said, quote for quote. "It's not for me to judge Yankees, but great players see red." Now that could be Philadelphia. That could be the Reds. That can be probably not the Cardinals or the D-backs, but maybe the Red Sox. I don't know. Like, that is a red team. If they have a big bat yanked, that's the Yankees out of their lineup. I haven't met, there's the Mets, a team that dodges, there's the Dodgers, a 5-tool player to fill, and Phil was like Philadelphia. Their center field need is a giant step towards the playoffs. There's the Giants, north and south outfielders that fly with power. They're rare birds. I don't know who that could be. It could be a lot of teams out there in the offseason. There's a lot of startups, a lot of startup organizations, and for that reason, there's a lot of angel investors that are looking for a very, very versatile outfielder. So other than that, Bellinger has not had much interest. Birds probably means the Blue Jays, but so you're saying Yankees, a red team, maybe probably the Reds, Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, Giants, Phillies, and then Blue Jays, Angels. I'd rather have Harrison Bader than Cody Bellinger. Now, you may be saying, Sterling, you're nuts. Like, are you serious? Really? Let's go to the numbers. Now, Cody Bellinger had an excellent season last year for the Yankees. Keep in mind, 30 years old, can play all three outfield positions, can also play first base. Ding, ding, ding. You have a positional winner on paper for you, right? Now, as a left-handed hitter, in New York, the job is a little easier in regards to hitting. Played 152 games last year. He hit 29 home runs. He hit 272. He slugged 480. He had a 125 WRC plus, which is only 3 points higher than Bader was, mind you. Had a 4.9 WAR and had a 334 OBP. All great numbers. All reasons to sign guys to $20 to $30 million a year contracts. All that makes sense, right? However, when you get into the splits at home and on the road, which you'd be leaving New York City, which is the easiest place to hit for a left-handed power hitter in all of baseball, and go to Oracle Park out there in San Francisco, it's going to be a lot harder. And there's a reason why. At home, Bellinger had 57 singles. On the road, 44. At home, 12 doubles. Okay. On the road, 13. A 1 double increase. Okay, fine. At home, 3 triples. On the road, 2 triples. Not too crazy. Okay. Sterling, where's the big difference? Here we go. On the road, 18 of his 29 home runs. On the road. So at home, 18 home runs. On the road, only 11 of his home runs. At home, 54 runs, which circumstantially isn't his fault, but it comes down to, can you get on base more? On the road, only 35 runs. At home, 55 RBIs. On the road, 43 RBIs. He was less patient. On the road, he struck out 12 more times on the road, and his average dropped 60 points from being at home to on the road. You don't love that. I wouldn't like that. Keep me away from that. Not a chance. Would I be like, yeah, that's who I want. Yeah. He struck out 16% on the road to 11.6 at home. Like I said, the average dropped, the on-base percent dropped 64%, the slugging percentage dropped 130 points. You don't want that. The OPS dropped nearly 200 points. You don't want that at all. The WRC plus was 152 at home. It was under league average at 97 on the road. Keep me away. Remove to fill the center field need is a giant step towards the playoffs in this Scott Boras pun-filled quote. I don't want the Giants to sign Cody Bellinger. I get it on paper. It makes sense. It's a slugger. It's fan value. I don't care. Harrison Bader is an equal to player to Cody Bellinger. The WRC Plus was similar all year long. He played in much pitcher-friendly ballparks and gave you, albeit less power. It's just it's very similar players in that, in that respect. Again, Bellinger gives you more pop in general. He hit 29 home runs. Bader hit 17. Naturally, both those guys' power would go down. So let's say Bellinger hits 25 or 23 home runs and Bader hits 12, right? Clearly, you'd pay for Bellinger to hit 22 home runs for you. But I could add, like, you're getting a much worse player that doesn't get the benefit of hitting in Yankee Stadium, not at Oracle Park. I want guys, like the Giants don't need to go get middle of the lineup dudes. You got 3 of them. And if Eldridge is who you think he is, you got 4 of them, right? You have to find how to fill the roster around. It's like making a sandwich, right? The Giants have the meat. It's like making a meal, right? You have your protein. You got your punch. You have your protein, whether it's steak or chicken thighs or like you got it. You got, okay, this is our main course. Okay, now do you want some roasted sweet potatoes and Brussels sprouts? And you're like, man, this really, some asparagus really complements the lineup. Or do you want some white bread and some, I don't know, some unsalted, unseasoned green beans? And I like green beans, but the Giants had green beans last year, where, yeah, some health benefits to that, but it's like it really doesn't hit. I'm still hungry after I eat the green beans and the steak. I'm like, I really wish we had some mashed potatoes. I really wish we had some roasted vegetables. Ooh, man, I really wish we had that loaded baked potato. The Giants don't have that. They have the protein. They just need to get the side dishes in order when it comes to their lineup. Now, that's why I like Bader, and it's why I'd be open to dealing Eldridge and somebody else for Gore and Abrams. There also is one more guy, and I'll be really quick here because it is a no, another no, a triple no, and to quote the Grinch, it is the holiday season. Hate, 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 triple hate, loathe entirely. I don't want to make this move. The Giants, according to John Palmarosi, have met with Astros free agent left-handed ace Framber Valdez. Framber, sinker baller, left-hander, fits the Giants to a T. You need a second ace, number 2 guy. You got to play the Dodgers and the Padres all year long. Got to beat those guys come playoff time. You got to go through the Philadelphia Phillies in the playoffs if they can get there. The Braves are going to be better this year. They have to be. How do you play Olsen, Riley, and Acuna and Albies and all those guys out there in Atlanta? How do you make a way through the playoffs? You got to have starting pitching, right? Valdez makes sense. I can almost guarantee you San Francisco, and this is why I'm out. There's an attitude problem there. And I'm sure Posey saw Valdez cross up his catcher on purpose to send a message. I'd be out. That is a selfish move. It's a non-team-centered move. Who's to stop Valdez from doing that crap in a meaningful game? Because what? You got pissed off in the middle of the game at your catcher? You want to risk hurting somebody? That's not how you play the game. Now, it's one instance. Maybe it isn't a big deal. I beg to differ. I think it is a big deal. The Giants are trying to build a culture. You have a new manager. The last thing you want is to sign a guy that is going to be, Mr. Bitchy in the corner. Call my pitch. It's like, no. You need guys like, Ray and Webb and Verlander. And albeit those guys are older, you want guys that aren't going to be an ass on the mound and make you and your team look bad. And quite frankly, maybe hurt your starting catcher and Patrick Bailey. So, no. I don't want to do it. Let somebody else make that mistake, kind of like Zach Gallen. Now, if Valdez, the market's slow and he isn't there, whatever, and look, maybe it's a one thing and, or a one-time thing, and you are like, look over at Sterling and it's not a big deal. He'll go to the Cubs and he'll be great. He'll go to, I don't know, somebody else and he'll be the Mets and he'll be a reason you don't go to the playoffs. I don't know. I just don't love the fact that a player of his caliber who's really good. Valdez is really good on the mound. No doubt about it. But it's like, I don't know. Like, do you want that guy pitching in San Francisco, donning the black and orange, where you're like, he may get pissed off one day and he's down 5-0, and in the third inning, and a pitcher calls for a fastball. He's like, no, you're getting a slider. And the next pitch, the guy calls for a slider. He's like, no, I'm throwing you a fastball. I'm not going to tell you about it. That just seems kind of Bush League to me. And I think that Posey, being a catcher himself, saw that and was like, we'll talk because we have to, but ideally, we're not giving $300 million to that guy. Now, his market may be down because of that, which could open the door for San Francisco, but I don't know. Like, we've heard so much that, like, they're not going to pay for a big starting pitcher, yet they're talking to all of them. So it's like, are you just kind of sifting through the weeds, trying to see what makes sense for you, or are you in? I don't think they're in. I think making a trade makes a lot more sense, but there's so much more to go. A lot of offseason left. Winter Meetings Day 2 is nearly over. It is right now 1 p.m. on Tuesday, December 9th. Winter Meetings will continue throughout the rest of the week. But as of right now, things are crickets besides the Edwin Diaz and the Kyle Schwarber signings by the Dodgers and the re-signing by the Philadelphia Phillies. The Giants, still nothing much. They're on the snooze as we speak, but hopefully things will change very soon. Drop those comments down below, though. What do you think the Giants should do this offseason? Is there a trade I mentioned you're saying, yes, do that right now? Do it. That guy needs to be in the orange and black. Are you saying go sign Cody Bellinger? Go get Harrison Bader. I want Framber Valdez. Drop those comments down below. Hope you're having a wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas. I can't say Happy New Year yet, but happy belated Thanksgiving, I guess, and happy winter meetings, because when winter meetings happen, that's when the rumor mill gets started, and it is started. It is hot. It is running away right now, but the Giants are very, very, very quiet, but we are begging for it to change in the upcoming days. But as we await for things, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the show, whether it's on YouTube or the audio podcasting platforms. Leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of the winter meetings. And until next time, get out of here. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Adios. Deuces.